Hey guys, Lord Naren White here, the Holy Ghost, the one true God, back with you with the next video in my series reading The Invisible Man by H.G. Wells. As usual, returning now to The Invisible Man as read by Lord Naren White. He looked about him again, listened, bent towards the mariner, and lowered his voice. The fact of it is, I happen to know just a thing or two about this invisible man from private sources. Oh, said the mariner, interested. You? Yes, said Mr. Marvel. Me. Indeed, said the mariner, and may I ask, you'll be astonished, said Mr. Marvel behind his hand. It's tremendous. Indeed, said the mariner. The fact is, began Mr. Marvel eagerly in a confidential undertone. Suddenly his expression changed marvelously. Ow! He said. He rose stiffly in his seat. His face was eloquent of physical suffering. Wow! He said. What's up? Said the mariner, concerned. Toothache, said Mr. Marvel, and put his hand to his ear. He caught hold of his books. I must be getting on, I think, he said. He edged in a curious way along the seat away from his interlocutor. But you was just a-going to tell me about this here invisible man, protested the mariner. Mr. Marvel seemed to consult with himself. Hoax, said a voice. It's a hoax, said Mr. Marvel. But it's in the paper, said the mariner. Hoax all the same, said Marvel. I know the chap that started the lie. There ain't no invisible man whatsoever, blimey. But how about this paper? Do you mean to say? Not a word of it, said Marvel, stoutly. The mariner stared, paper in hand. Mr. Marvel jerkily faced about. Wait a bit, said the mariner, rising and speaking slowly. Do you mean to say? I do, said Mr. Marvel. Then why did you let me go on and tell you all this blarsted stuff, then? What do you mean by letting a man make a fool of himself like that for, eh? Mr. Marvel blew out his cheeks. The mariner was suddenly very red indeed. He clenched his hands. I've been talking here this 10 minutes, he said. And you little pot-bellied, leathery-faced son of an old boot, couldn't have the elementary manners. Don't you come bandying words with me, said Mr. Marvel. Bandying words? I'm a jolly good man. Come up, said a voice. And Mr. Marvel was suddenly whirled about and started marching off in a curious, spasmodic manner. You'd better get a move on, said the mariner. Who's moving on? Said Mr. Marvel. He was receding obliquely with a curious hurrying gait, with occasional violent jerks forward. Some way along the road he began a muttered monologue, protest and recriminations. Silly devil, said the mariner, legs wide apart. Elbows akimbo, watching the receding figure. I'll show you, you silly ass, hoaxing me. It's here on the paper. Mr. Marvel retorted incoherently, and, receding, was hidden by a bend in the road. But the mariner still stood magnificent in the midst of the way. Under the approach of a butcher's cart dislodged him. Then he turned himself towards Port Stowe. Full of extraordinary asses, he said softly to himself. Just to take me down a bit. That was a silly game. It's on the paper. And there was another extraordinary thing he was presently to hear, that had happened quite close to him, and that was a vision of a fistful of money, no less, travelling without visible agency, along by the wall at the corner of St. Michael's Lane. A brother mariner had seen this wonderful sight that very morning, He had snatched at the money forthwith and had been knocked headlong. And when he had got to his feet, the butterfly money had vanished. Our mariner was in the mood to believe anything, he declared, but that was a bit too stiff. Afterwards, however, he began to think things over. The story of the flying money was true, and all about that neighborhood, even from the august London and Country Banking Company, from the tills of shops and inns, doors, standing that sunny weather entirely open, money had been quietly and dexterously making off that day in handfuls and rouleaux, floating quietly along by walls in shady places, dodging quickly from the approaching eyes of men. And it had, though no man had traced it, invariably ended its mysterious flight in the pocket of that agitated gentleman in the obsolete silk hat, sitting outside the little inn on the outskirts of Port Stowe. It was 10 days after, and indeed only when the Burdock story was already told, that the mariner collated these facts, and began to understand how near he had been to the wonderful invisible man. Chapter 15. The Man Who Was Running. In the early evening time, Dr. Kemp was sitting in his study in the Belvedere, on the hill overlooking Burdock. It was a pleasant little room with 3 windows, north, west, and south, and bookshelves covered with books and scientific publications, and a broad writing table, and, under the north window, a microscope, glass slips, minute instruments, some cultures, and scattered bottles of reagents. Dr. Kemp's solar lamp was lit, albeit the sky was still bright with the sunset light, and his blinds were up because there was no offense of peering outsiders to require them pulled down. Dr. Kemp was a tall and slender young man, with flaxen hair and a mustache almost white, and the work he was upon would earn him, he hoped, the fellowship of the Royal Society, so highly did he think of it. And his eye, presently wandering from his work, caught the sunset blazing at the back of the hill that is over against his own. For a minute, perhaps, he sat, pen in mouth, admiring the rich golden color above the crest, and then his attention was attracted by the little figure of a man, inky black, running over the hill brow towards him. He was a shortish little man, and he wore a high hat, and he was running so fast that his legs veerily twinkled. "Another one of those fools," said Dr. Kemp. "Like that ass who ran into me this morning around a corner, with the visible man a-coming, sir. I can't imagine what possesses people. One might think we were in the 13th century." He got up, went to the window, and stared at the dusky hillside, and the dark little figure tearing down it. "He seems in a confounded hurry," said Dr. Kemp, "but he doesn't seem to be getting on. If his pockets were full of lead, he couldn't run heavier." "Spurted, sir?" said Dr. Kemp. In another moment the higher of the villas that had clambered up from the hill from Burdock had occulted the running figure. He was visible again for a moment, and again, and then again, 3 times between the 3 detached houses that came next, and then the terrace hid him. "Asses!" said Dr. Kemp, swinging round on his heel and walking back to his writing table. But those who saw the fugitive near, and perceived the abject terror on his perspiring face, being themselves in the open roadway, did not share in the doctor's contempt. By the man pounded, and as he ran he chinked like a well-filled purse that is tossed to and fro. He looked neither to the right nor the left, but his dilated eyes stared straight downhill to where the lamps were being lit. And the people were crowded in the street, and his ill-shaped mouth fell apart, and a glary foam lay on his lips, and his breath came hoarse and noisy. All he passed stopped and began staring up the road and down, and interrogating one another with an inkling of discomfort for the reason of his haste. We'll go ahead and stop there for this week. As usual, I want to say thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed. Please like, comment, and subscribe, as it greatly helps the channel. Light be with you all. Take care, and thanks again.